Hello friends, my name is Jacqueline Miller, and I would like to talk to you about the literacy system that I've created. I've been a middle school reading teacher for about 11 years, and I've noticed that with each passing year, more and more of the testing is done online. Now, there are a lot of really good programs out there, but they can be very costly, and our schools and districts don't always have the money to purchase the program. Also, sometimes when we do have access to the program for one year, the funds aren't available to get it for the next year, and so then we're left struggling to find something new for our students. Additionally, unfortunately, sometimes the internet has some problems. I can remember sometimes when I took my students to the lab and we were all set to use a program, and then the internet crashed. Or, in other cases, the program started running slowly because there were so many people logged on trying to use it. Because of that, I decided to go ahead and create my own literacy system, and I'd like to show you how that works. For installment number 1, I used the story of Hansel and Gretel, and in other installments I will be using some fairy tales, and then I'll go on to myths and some biblical stories. The reason that I'm picking these stories is because students need to be able to understand allusions that are made in other works of literature. If they're not familiar with the stories from where the allusions come, they won't understand why an author wrote what he or she wrote. For that reason, I decided to start simple with some fairy tales. Let me show you how the program works. After you purchase this program, you simply upload it onto your computer, and then you go to Slideshow and From Beginning. The technology in the program does everything else. What I would like to point out to you is that this is a one-sitting reading. Students will be able to read the entire passage in one sitting, and then they'll be able to respond to some multiple choice questions, and there's also going to be an extended response item as well. As a way of differentiating my instruction, I've given students a few options for building fluency. The first thing they could do is listen to the passage. So they would simply click on listen. It takes them to that appropriate slide, and then they start to hear me reading the passage. Let's take a listen. After students listen to the entire story, they then have the option for the speed that they want to read the story at, or they can return to the table of contents. I'm going to go ahead and return to the table of contents because those same options are right here. So what this is this helps students develop their fluency. They have to read the story before the words disappear off of the screen. Now let me go back and reiterate. The listening to the selection is not a necessity. I like to use that option for my students who are struggling readers so that they can start to hear and understand what the story is about and get the gist of what they are reading. My students have the option of picking the red speed, which is slow, the yellow speed, which is medium, or the green speed, which is fast. They have to read the words on the screen before they disappear. Go ahead and check this out. So you can see the rate at which the words are leaving off of the screen. Some of my 7th graders are already able to read at this rate, and that's fantastic. So with ongoing practice, they just get better and better, and then their comprehension starts to improve as well. When students get to the end of the reading, they have an option of doing a repeated reading. They could simply press this and it repeats at that same speed, or they can go right to the comprehension assessment. For some of my students, they were a little ambitious and they picked the green speed and they found that to be too fast. So then they simply return to the table of contents and then they can pick a slower speed, either the red speed or the yellow speed. Let's take a look at the comprehension assessment. I've noticed that the questions on the test are becoming more and more challenging. The college and career level of assessments have the students thinking at a higher level. For that reason, I knew that I needed to model my questions after those types of assessments. So for example, my first question says, which choice best explains why Hansel and Gretel's stepmother wanted to leave them in the wood? I purposely start my questions easy, and then they gradually become more challenging. Students may need to reread a part of the story, And so what I've done is I've given them a hint. They just click right there, and a hint drops down. And I've highlighted the words that they should be zeroing in on, and that should help them arrive at the correct answer. So instead of rereading the entire passage here, they're just reading a portion of it. They click here to return to the question. And then as they click on the response, it gives them immediate feedback. It tells them if their answer is correct or incorrect, and it tells them why. When the answer is correct, there's some sort of reward. In this case, it's just some fireworks, and I tell them great job. And I just want to show you again, if they click the incorrect answer, it tells them why. After they arrive at the correct answer, they click the arrow, and they just move on. Okay? In some instances, the question needs a little bit more support than just a drop-down menu. Let's take a look at this question here. It says, select the statements that show how Gretel's mood changes in response to the events in the plot. Select 3 choices. So when students click here, it takes them to a different page this time. Now at any point, they can return to the question by clicking Return to Question 5. If they click on the hint, it tells them what to reread so that they can see how the character felt. Here's another hint for them if they need a little bit more support. It shows them exactly what to read. The purpose of this is to help students start to learn how to look back in the text and what to look at. We don't want them to just spend a lot of time looking all over the text. We want students to be able to know exactly where to look. So this built-in support helps them do just that. There are a few other supports there. And then they can return to the question. And now they should be able to answer the question. And once again, when students click on a response, it tells them why that response is incorrect, or it tells them why the response is correct. So far, students have had a few opportunities to read the story. They could have listened to the story, but then they read it once just to get the gist of it to understand. Then, as they responded to the questions, they zeroed in on specific parts of the passage. And finally, they come to the extended response item. With the new assessments, students will have to respond to an extended response item that's related to the reading. And so that's why I've built this into the program. Students will read the prompts, and then they make sure they see what they have to include. They can also view the grading rubric that will be used. This rubric is taken from the state of Indiana so that our grading is consistent with the grading that's done on assessments. If students need to reread parts of the story, once again, they can do that. So now we're talking about a third, possible fourth reading of certain parts of the story. This follows the close reading that students are expected to be able to engage in order to improve upon their comprehension. One of the fantastic things about this system is that there's no internet connection required. So you don't have to worry about the internet crashing or a site working slowly and students getting off task. Everything is run through PowerPoint, so they'll be able to remain on task and engaged in the lesson. Additionally, there are no licensing or renewal issues to be concerned about. You buy each installment just one time, and you can use it again and again with as many students as you want to. In fact, you can even share this with other teachers in your building. I know how hard we all work, and it's challenging to always have to put out more and more money to buy things. So let's not even worry about licensing issues. You buy one installment, you can use it with as many students in the building as you see fit. In addition to the PowerPoint, I've included a teacher pack. I've made it very easy to navigate the teacher pack by including hyperlinks. You simply click on whichever page you want to go to, and it takes you there. There's a letter to the teacher, which covers the information that I've covered. It tells you what's included, gives you suggestions for use, and also talks about the features. Some of you are under the Common Core standards, so I list here the different Common Core standards that are addressed. Others of you are in Indiana, and you have some different standards, so I've listed those standards as well. I've included a physical copy of Hansel and Gretel. It's the same story that the students read in the PowerPoint. And for one of the suggestions for use, I say on day 2, go ahead and pass out the story to the students. You can even then go into the PowerPoint and play the audio for them so that they can hear a model of good reading. You can also pass out some of the multiple choice questions. These are, again, the same questions that are in the PowerPoint. It's just in physical form right here for you. You can pass these questions out to the students, and then you can have them go back into the passage and highlight the clues that help them come to the correct answer. I've included the essay prompt, the planning page, lined paper, and an editing checklist for the student essay. So be sure to pass this out to the students before they're working on the computers so that they can respond to that essay. There's also a grading rubric right here that you can pass out to the students so that they can see how they're being evaluated. This is the same grading rubric that the students saw themselves when they were in the PowerPoint. The next thing I've included is a student response card for the multiple choice questions. I like to have my students write what they thought the first answer was, what their first choice was, and then they have to circle yes or no if the answer was correct or incorrect. And then they have to write the correct answer on this side, since within the program they get to see what the correct answers are. This helps keep them accountable, and it also helps me to know which questions the students are missing the most so that I can then address that within the classroom. Right here I have a quick comments sheet. I was finding myself writing these different things about the different elements that were included on the students' papers time and time again, and with over 110 students, it was just taking way too long. So I created this quick comment sheet so that we can all very quickly mark what a student's strength was, and then on this side, put some areas where improvement is needed. And here is the answer key to the multiple choice questions. And now one of my favorite parts is the exemplar response. Research shows that students' writing becomes better when they get to see a really good response. And let's be honest, we really don't always have the time to sit down and write an exemplar response. And sometimes, unfortunately, none of the students' writing is at the level that we want it to be. So sometimes we want to just push them a little bit further. So I've included the planning for the exemplar response. I showed the students how I did the planning. Since the time is of the essence, I like to just use the prompt page to do my planning. And so you can print this off and share it with your students. Then I analyze my response 3 different times. The first time I analyze the response, I'm zeroing in on ideas. That's the first area of the grading rubric. So you can share this with your students and you can see how my ideas were developed in my essay. The second time I analyze the exemplar response, I focus on organization, which is the second part of the grading rubric. I show them the ways in which I organized my writing so that they can start to organize their writing in that same manner. I also point out transitional words that are used so that their writing can start to flow a little smoother. Finally, I do an analysis of the exemplar response for style, voice, and language skills. Those are the last 3 areas of the grading rubric, and so they can start to see how one's writing can improve when those things are done correctly. The last few pages are specifically for the teacher. First, there's the terms of use, and I tell you that each new installment that will be posted in my Teachers Pay Teacher store will be 75% off for the first 48 hours. If you become a follower of mine on Teachers Pay Teachers, you will be notified when new installments are posted. This way, more of you can get this at a discounted price. Next, I have my credits page. And finally, I have some other products that I've created that are posted in my Teachers Pay Teachers store that you might enjoy. Thank you so much for your interest in my literacy system, and I hope to hear from you soon.